I've gone right down the rabbit hole with this, and I'm so happy I did. There are a lot of social issues that I think are still relevant today. When you finish this, let me know what you think. Should he have been treated as a pariah or treated as a martyr? Here is my research. Tony Curtis was a kid from the Bronx who became a top star during the golden age of Hollywood. As his career waned, alongside acting, he vigorously pursued another vocation, becoming a staunch figurehead of a national campaign before a dramatic arrest in England led to a stunning dismissal. This is Tony Curtis versus Big Tobacco.
He knows. Good.
Hello, Mr. Curtis. How are you?
Fine, thanks.
Tony Curtis was one of the last living top-billing actors from Hollywood's golden age. His career soared in the 1950s, racking up iconic movies that still hold up today. The Defiant Ones, Spartacus, and Some Like It Hot. Officially ranked as the best comedy of all time by me. Also the American Film Institute. Soon after the movie, he infamously declared that kissing co-star Marilyn Monroe, let me check my notes, was like kissing Hitler, which I've heard on good authority isn't a compliment. At the time, actor Charlton Heston issued a staunch defense. I'd really like to do a picture with Marilyn, even if Tony Curtis said kissing Marilyn was like kissing Hitler, which I think was meant as a compliment. This quote would torment Tony years later. He said he was being jokingly sarcastic and that he really liked her. But in 1965, he remarked, "I didn't like her." So I don't know who to believe, Tony Curtis or Tony Curtis. Anyway, something we know for certain that Mr. Curtis hated was smoking.
Smoke now, pay later.
After his father passed away from a smoking-related illness, he kicked the habit at a time when smoking was still very much in vogue. To the landmark US Surgeon General's 1964 report linking cigarette and diseases in a national newspaper, he publicly declared war. He became an anti-smoking zealot, saying he'd turned the set of his movie Sex and the Single Girl, obviously co-starring Henry Fonda, into daily Smokers Anonymous meetings, claiming he converted 12 people and that he can cure anyone of the addiction using the Curtis method. I give them 20 minutes of talk, which is a combination of persuasion, hypnosis, and good old-fashioned bull.
Medically proven, yes, by 6 out of 5 doctors.
But the tobacco industry weren't concerned about Tony Curtis. They were still able to advertise and sponsor, but in 1967 they had their first direct challenge due to a ruling called the Fairness Doctrine, and this was about balance. For every cigarette ad, broadcasters were now required to run an anti-smoking ad. Now they were effective to a level, but many stars feared for their careers by denouncing the tobacco industry. In July 1968, an executive for the American Cancer Society revealed 80 professional actors refused to appear in the commercials, scared they wouldn't be hired for cigarette-sponsored shows or would lose big money offers for pro-smoking commercials. But within just 9 months, attitudes would drastically change.
Congratulations. I quit. Cigarettes, that is.
On March the 11th, 1969, Tony became national chairman of the American Cancer Society I Quit campaign. He was a showbiz personality who would provide social validation to the important messages. A wave of entertainers publicly renounced their previous roles in smoking advertisements, such as Henry Morgan and actor Joseph Sorolla, who declared, "I can afford to be moral." Stars such as Doris Day and Lawrence Welk had contracts stipulating that no tobacco company would be able to sponsor their shows. Having Tony Curtis on board meant there was now an expectation that major Hollywood stars would follow suit. His star power was a colossal threat to Big Tobacco. The tobacco industry were losing power. A 1972 study showed the anti-smoking ads were far more effective than their own, so they worked desperately to diminish the anti-smoking drive where possible. They needed those adverts stopped, and Tony made himself one of the biggest targets. During a 1969 hearing, US Congressman W.R. Hull stated, "Last week in the Washington Star, Tony Curtis stated quitting smoking improved his sex life. That is one thing to tell adults, but do you think that it's appropriate expending government money to tell that sort of thing to children?" And Congressman Hull, by the way, and I'm sure this is purely a coincidence, he happened to be co-owner of Hull's Tobacco Warehouse in western Missouri. So there were law creators who had vested interest in undermining Tony's campaign.
Tony quit, and I'll always be grateful.
In early 1970, his commercials were released to the public, and he appeared on TV shows around the country, explaining to people how to kick the habit. He appeared on a Bob Hope special, in a sketch where Tony plays a member of Smokers Anonymous trying to help Hope cope with withdrawal symptoms.
I've seen long entrances, but this is ridiculous.
Someone like me who struggles to cope with nicotine withdrawal symptoms, I'm not sure I could find the funny in it. But Bob was a skilled comedian. But elements of the public and news media seemed a little bit tired of his pious nature, like he was infringing on people's personal choices. A journalist described him as being so messianic about his crusade, he's delivered a sermon to every star in Hollywood, including several chimneys. Tony had many detractors, and on April the 26th, 1970, he gave them exactly what they wanted. He was traveling in an airplane via the air from New York to London to film The Persuaders with Roger Moore. When he landed at Heathrow Airport, he was searched and marijuana was found in his luggage, and he was arrested for possession, not of the luggage, the drugs. He had less than an ounce. His defense in court the next day was that he was with a friend, and his friend was very concerned for Tony, who was very anxious about spending a long period in England, so maybe needed something to cope, which is perfectly understandable. Sadly, the nerds in England didn't agree. He pled guilty and was fined the equivalent of $120. And the media had a field day, seemingly delighted in painting him as a hypocrite and fed up with his perceived holier-than-thou righteous attitude. British newspapers pointing out that the year prior, he campaigned in England against cigarettes. American headlines included Curtis fined for possessing pot with the subheading, "He's a foe of smoking." Another, non-smoking Curtis held in pot case. Congressman William Wampler saying, "I heard Tony Curtis was in England extolling the ill effects of smoking. The story on the tobacco market is if you quit smoking, you go to pot." Ha 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 ha. The day after his conviction, he felt an immediate backlash. People were losing their gosh darn minds. A programming secretary in Salt Lake City ordered all of Tony's PSA video spots destroyed. Program managers, one exclaimed, "If you say you're going to quit smoking, you're supposed to quit. You can't believe somebody would do this." Another said, "This makes the anti-smoking campaign seem laughable." All of his various local and national TV spots recorded for the American Cancer Society were swiftly terminated. NBC, ABC, CBS, all of the three-letter broadcasting companies dropped them from the air. Tony was left in tatters.
Hi, I'm Leslie Curtis, Tony Curtis's wife.
His then-wife, Leslie, couldn't believe his adverts had been cancelled. "Leave it to a man's countrymen to do him in. 60,000 people will die this year, and nobody has yet died from less than an ounce of grass." He was silent on the issue for a few months before early 1971, Gene Kelly took over the chairmanship, filling Tony Curtis's boots, that he probably changed to tap shoes. It's all a bit of fun. A few months after, cigarette advertising was banned on TV and radio, so PSAs required by the Fairness Doctrine ended also. Public health advocates struggled to have the funding to continue advertising on their own, and subsequently, cigarette smoking began to increase. In conclusion, the tobacco industry won that battle, but certainly didn't win the war. For Tony, until the rest of his life, even without the massive platform of the American Cancer Society, he refused to be silenced and was immensely vigilant in public and private in helping people quit, including actors Terence Morgan, Roger Moore, and Sir Michael Caine, who all credited him with saving their lives. Was his punishment justified, or was it way out of proportion? What's worse, tobacco or marijuana? Should he have been treated as a pariah or treated as a martyr? A really strange conclusion to this is that when Tony died in 2010, a eulogy was given by the then Governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger, fresh from signing a bill to reduce marijuana possession to an infraction. That's what Tony would have wanted.